Hi and welcome to today's live chapter reading of Moonlit Whisper by Amy McKinley, courtesy of Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1, Fiona. Bring it, Theo, Lachlan shouted from across Trinity's football field. Oh, I'll bring it. I pushed off the green turf with my toes, lightly dribbling the ball as I raced across the field, the goal in sight, Lachlan my only obstacle. He advanced. As he closed the distance, I moved my foot around the ball and fate going left. I tapped the ball with my back foot and shot away from his course. Out of my peripheral, I caught Lach's pivot. In no time, he was racing beside me, a shoulder bump, and I stumbled to the side. He stole the ball. Hey, I stopped. With a powerful kick, he sent the ball into the goal. It was a beautiful shot, I'd give him that. That's how it's done. Lach jogged back. Hands on hips, I glared, fighting a smile at his stellar shot. Shoulder checking so I'm almost on my arse. His arms wound around me before giving my bottom a smack. Such a pretty arse it is. I couldn't help it. I looped my arms around his neck. I don't know why I let you talk me into doing this. The sunlight glinted off his blonde hair. I reached up and swept a few strands off his forehead. You love it, he winked. There is that. But that wasn't why I played football with him whenever he wanted, which was a lot. I wanted to spend time together. He was fun to be around. Didn't take too many things seriously except for the sport he hoped to turn into a career. There was no doubt he would. I wanted that for him too. I'd grown up playing football, which made sense because my dad coached the sport. When we moved to Dublin for his new job as Trinity's head coach, I was glad I played so well. It gave me an easy way to make friends. That's how I met the two boys who were my neighbours, and who had quickly become my best friends. Lach tucked my hair behind my ears and pressed a kiss to my lips. Come on, I'll buy you a cup of coffee. He paused, pressing his lips together in a straight line. Before you hit the books. I'd love to, but I'm meeting Dad in a few minutes. You know, summer's almost over. You better check your email to see if you have any assignments to do before the first day of class. I will, eventually. He gave my hand a squeeze, then switched topics. The football season starts tomorrow. You should come watch my practice. I like to look up and see you in the stands. I clamped my mouth shut before a snippy remark could escape. We'd been over this before. I pushed my irritation aside and responded in as even of a tone I could manage. I would if I could, but I've got a lot going on tomorrow. Silence stretched between us as we made our way toward the athletic building. Rain check on the coffee. I'm meeting Dad. He's asked me to tutor a new transfer. I don't understand why you do that. I enjoy it. Besides, I get to work on papers, and you know how much I like to write. With an exaggerated mock shudder, he responded, and read. Yes. Even though he was teasing, sort of, I fought for calm. I loved reading. We don't have to like the same things all the time. He threaded our fingers together before we stepped off the field. A sigh pushed past his lips and hung between us for a few seconds. I want you at the practice and games. I'm at the games, Lach, but I have things to do too. I have more on my plate than some of the other girls, or one in particular. A cleat chaser, Brittany, who liked to shoot daggers at me when our paths crossed. I'd landed a footballer, one she wanted. Lach stopped and pulled me in front of him, so we faced one another. I'm sorry. I know you're there as much as you can be. I just miss you is all. I melted into him, and he wrapped me up in a tight squeeze. You matter, Theo. That's really all I needed to hear, and the irritation fled. I rose on my toes and pressed my lips to his. If only things could have stayed that simple. Tomorrow would come too soon, and with it, a whole host of problems for Lach and I. Chapter 2, Fiona. I needed you, I whispered to the boy who used to crawl through my bedroom window. Connor flinched, and I glared at him across the table. We were in Trinity's Hamilton Library, not the old library with the 18th century magnificence and Book of Kells, but it would do. I couldn't believe he was back. My gaze combed over his face, tracing the hard angles and planes, and taking in everything that had changed. grown, matured. Even when he lived next door, he'd kept his black hair short in an easy-to-maintain cut. He was handsome when we were kids. He was drool-worthy now. Not that his looks mattered. 6 long years, and he'd returned for our 4th year at Trinity College. He'd left Ireland, and me, to live across the pond with his mum. He'd been scouted and offered a position on an Olympic development team for soccer, as they called it over there, along with a full scholarship for college. We'd kept in contact at first, but after a few months there were no texts or phone calls, not even a stupid snail mail letter sent across the Atlantic Ocean by rowboat. Point being, he'd left me. I never wanted to go. Blinking away tears, I ducked my head. He'd always been observant, attuned to my every changing emotion. Not anymore. Agitated, I curled my fingers around the edges of a research paper in front of me and focused on that. It was his. My dad, the college's football coach, has sent me up to route with his new forward, a transfer student, with any writing assignments in a required course he was taking over the summer. I'd already completed it, so I agreed. I hadn't known the new player would be Connor. My dad and I would have words. I couldn't leave it alone. Then why did you leave? Why didn't you tell your parents you weren't going? It wasn't fair of me to ask. His family life was very different from mine, and getting away would have been a relief. I should have been happy for him, and part of me was. The selfish part wanted to shield him from his past in my room at night. His fingers brushed the back of my hand. Where he made contact, zings of electricity flowed. My cheeks heated from his simple caress, and I swayed towards him until I caught my reaction. No. I withdrew the hand he touched, and I looped my necklace over my finger until I caught the Celtic crescent moon charm, the one he'd given me all those years ago. He noticed. That I wore it after all these years was telling, and I tucked it beneath the collar of my shirt and cleared my throat. I did it for my mum, His intense blue eyes held mine as he took my not-so-subtle hint of avoidance. She begged me to. Oh God, I was a monster. His mum had also suffered at the hands of his dad, and she'd gone with Connor. Their dad had stayed for business reasons, but it must have been her way of ensuring her son would be safe. From beneath my eyelashes I studied him, the lines bracketing his mouth, how his hand lay flat on the table as if he'd stopped himself from touching me again. It was a gamble going to the school across the pond. But it worked, I whispered, the words between us. His dad hadn't followed. The anger I felt faded, mostly. I'm sorry, Theo. His large, rough hand covered mine. My mum was with me because I was underage. She pushed for this, and I couldn't deny her, because it gave her freedom. She swore she'd never go back. Again I moved my hand away. Is she happy? Chapel bells chimed in the background. A sexy grin curved his lips, and my cheekbones heated. Damn it, stupid, traitorous hormones. She is. They finally divorced. I think my dad agreed to it because he'd met someone else on one of his business trips. Mum found a good man in America who loves her and treats her well. A teacher. We kept our voices down as the study room I'd tried to book was occupied, and we were out in the open. A flash of long blonde hair entered my peripheral vision, and something about the way the person moved caused me to pause and look. It was Brittany, the fecking maggot. She smirked as she neared with several of the other girls who liked to hang around the footballers. A mischievous gleam entered her eyes. Sidling next to Connor, she placed a hand on his shoulder. I didn't know you'd be studying here. Want to grab some lunch? A wall came over his face, and I wanted to laugh. He didn't suffer fools gladly, and Brittany was one for sure. A cleat chaser, she and her friends who had one clear goal. Secure the one who was sure to be offered a professional contract. Thanks, but no. He turned back to me, dislodging her touch. I couldn't help but laugh. That was a clear bitch slap. Her gaze hardened, and she found mine. I'm surprised to see you here, Fiona. One guy isn't enough. I'd be more than willing to take lack off your hands. Go away, you idiot, I snapped. Brittany huffed, and I grinned until Connor's keen attention caused my skin to heat. Not wanting to have that discussion yet, I steered the conversation back to him. Where are you living? My heart pounded. I wanted him to stay close even though it wasn't meant to be. Not anymore. I'd made my choice. In the old house, for now. I'll move when Dad comes home. I won't live with him. His gaze searched mine. I knew what he wanted, only I wasn't free to offer my house. I dropped my eyes back to the paper I'd edited. Let's get started. We bent our heads and went over the general flow of the paper, fixing prepositions at the end of sentences and minor grammatical errors, and adding transitions as needed. All the while my heart warred with my mind. This boy had been mined. What the hell was I going to do?